The Pittsburgh Penguins are in the thick of the hunt for one of the two wild card spots in the Eastern Conference, but just like the New York Islanders and Florida Panthers, they can't find consistency. Hunter Hodies of Locked On Penguins is here to talk about the playoff race and all things Pittsburgh Penguins next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Penguins, Hunter Hodies. And Hunter, what is with this Penguins team? Because one game or even one period, they look like they could beat anybody. In one period, they look like they couldn't beat a fraternity team on their third keg. So what is happening to the Pittsburgh Penguins right now?
This season is exhausting. I am so tired of it. You know, you're right. They played their butts off against the Avalanche. They actually steamrolled the defending champions earlier this week. They play well against Dallas, don't get the result that they probably deserve. For two periods, they look like world beaters against the Capitals. And then, like clockwork, they give up a 3-goal lead in like 15 minutes. And it's like, watching them defend a lead, it's comical, honestly. They get tight. They don't know what to do. And you saw that after that Ovechkin goal on Saturday night. You know, I was at the arena and people around me were saying, like, you know, this is going to get tied. Just a few minutes later, it did get tied, but in a surprising twist where they usually would lose that kind of game, Evgeni Malkin became the hero and did a celebration that, you know, he was fired up. But they've been inconsistent all year. You know, as you said, great periods sometimes, bad periods some other times. They can't defend very well. They've gotten inconsistent goaltending. The special teams have stunk. They're 31st in finishing per natural stat trick at 5-on-5, which is terrible. You know, I don't know how this is going to end. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but man, I did not think they would be in this situation, to say the least. I've never seen a Penguins team that is this unwilling to hold a lead late in games. They've lost more third period leads this season than they have, you know, I believe combined throughout the previous seasons in the Mike Sullivan era. That's very rare. There's a time 2016 and 17 combined, they were 44-0 after leading after two periods. Where is that? Obviously, you know, the roster is a lot different. I get it, but you know, losing double-digit games when you have a lead in the third period, just not a recipe for success. And, you know, they're 3 points up on the Panthers. They've been able to create a little bit of separation, but, you know, you still got 9 more games left. Anything can happen. They still got to keep playing like this is game 7.
What is the cause of this inconsistency? Is this team defense? Is it coaching? Is it goaltending? Where did this come from?
I think it's a combination of factors. You know, Mike Sullivan's deployment at times has been very questionable. You know, we obviously saw the Islanders games where the Penguins threw out Jeff Carter for some reason when they're trying to defend a 1-goal lead with 1 or 2 minutes left. That's not what you got to do there. You know, I also think they get tight. You know, I don't think it seems like they don't even like defending those kind of leads. They want to be running gun. They're not as passive as they should be at times. That also comes back to coaching. Goaltending, there's been some squeakers that have been let in. You know, again, those Islander games come up right away when I think about games they lost, because whether it was DeSmith or Jarry, they let in a couple goals that, you know, should not be going in. And then even last night, DeSmith's playing very well against the Capitals, 2 pretty leaky goals. You know, that's what can happen. So it's really just a combination of all those factors, Gil. You know, just, you know, I'll also put the injuries in there. They're without Jeff Petrie right now. I think he's coming back this week. Marcus Pettersson's probably done for the rest of the regular season. That is very, very tough. He's been arguably their best defenseman all year. You know, Jan Ruda's been hurt. You know, some players take penalties late in games. We saw that earlier this week with Chad Ruedel costing them 2 points against the Senators, or at least a point against the Senators, and then potentially costing them at least a point against the Dallas Stars. Just, you know, bad hockey late in games. And it's, you know, coaching, goaltending, the inability to defend, the inability to make good decisions on the fly. Excuse me, this is not a smart hockey team, and you've seen that this season. I'll say this: if they're able to get in the playoffs, I think it's going to be one of the greatest feats of the Crosby, Malkin, Letang era, that they've been able to carry this. I'll be nice. This very underwhelming rest of the roster.
Talk to me about Tristan Jarry. Before we started recording, you mentioned he's banged up. Is he going to be able to play at his highest level at all this year based on the injuries he's going through?
It's a very fair question. He's been battling injuries all year. It was his groin. I've heard it's now his back that's been banged up. I think it's just mainly been a pain tolerance thing whenever it flares up. That's more speculation on my part, but I've heard from a couple people that he's dealing with a back injury. Those can be tricky. Some days you're feeling great, some days you're not. And he was good enough to back up last night. That's good. Tokarski was sent down. He hasn't been brought back up just yet. I assume he will get some starts this week. Maybe they'll ride DeSmith a little bit, but that's risky because the more he plays, the worse he plays. That's just how it is with your backup. So, they're going to have to rely on Jarry in order to make the playoffs, and then, in order to at least win a few games or a series or two in the playoffs. That's how I see it. He's going to have to start those games. I don't care, if with the back injury, the guy played on a broken foot last season in Game 7. We've seen that he can play through pain if needed. I think he's probably going to have to do that again if the Penguins want to go far here, if they do make the playoffs. But, I think these final 9 games, they might be split up a little bit just because to give him a little bit of a break. I honestly think that Saturday game was more about giving him a break, and the Dallas one because he was a bit banged up. But I do think, again, in order for this team to go far, he needs to be at the level we saw earlier this season before the injury, and then all of last regular season before he got hurt.
Going to be interesting. One advantage I think this team has, you have your Crosbys and your Letangs and your Malkins, guys who have been there and done that before. What are the keys for the Penguins to finish strong and make the playoffs other than getting better goaltending?
Yeah, I honestly just see it as, I want to see the process continue to yield results. So this team, top 5 in expected goals since February, top 5 in shot attempts, top 5 in high danger chances, middle of the pack in terms of save percentage. That could be a little further down if the goaltending continues to be not that good. 31st in finishing. The team needs to finish their chances. That's 2 straight seasons now where they have been in the lower third of the league in terms of finishing. That I think says more about the with how the roster was built, but usually that still regresses to the mean. I want to see other players like we saw on Saturday night contribute and help the cause. It can't just be Sidney Crosby, Evgeni Malkin, Jake Guentzel, Rickard Rakell. It can't just be those guys carrying you the rest of the way. We saw it on Saturday. Ryan Poehling gets a goal. Chad Ruedel gets his first of the season. Need more players like that to step up. Heck, even Jeff Carter scored on Wednesday for the first time since Nam, and then finally spoke to the media after like he was the second coming of Jesus Christ himself because he never speaks to the media after. But, those are the things I'm looking for. They obviously got to get bodies back. You're not going to get playoff games with this defense right now. You got Taylor Verdun getting minutes. You got Mark Freeman getting top 4 minutes. That's not the way you want to go there. So core continues to go continues to go. I want to see the depth step up, and I want to see the defense start to get a little healthier here down the stretch. Outside of goaltending, of course. And please get the penalty kill back up and rolling. I'll always say it. You can win with a bad power play and a good penalty kill. You can't win with both bad special teams units, and both of them have not been up to par this season.
Well, it's going to be an interesting last 9 games of the season for sure. Hunter, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodies. The show's Twitter is at @Penguins. You can find the Locked On Penguins podcast wherever you get your podcast. Just passed 1,000 subs on the YouTube channel. Very happy about that. And, you can watch it there, and you can listen on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and all that good stuff.
All right, Hunter, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Well, then you've got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they're all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in amazing flavors like peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, churro, and my personal favorite, cookies and cream. And listen to these macros. Each bar averages just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, but it packs a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now, you could still go to built.com and have a box delivered directly to your door. But if you want to go out and get a box immediately, you can now go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick one up in person. So again, that's built.com to have them delivered, or Walmart or Sam's Club to pick them up in person. Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You can thank me later.